So today I'm going to do a really awesome tag that steakuccino started maybe a couple weeks ago as her 100th video, and that is the required 101 tag. That is books that you have read and loved, but you only read them because they were required for school. There are so many choices for me, especially since I was an English literature major. I read, up to 10 books for one class, and, after a while that adds up. I was finally able to narrow it down, I think, to, I don't even have a number, 4? Let's start with probably the first one, chronologically the first one, which was Gabriel Garcia Marquez's 100 Years of Solitude. It's a magical realism book. It's set in a mythical city of Macondo, I think, in South America. And it's the story of a family and the way the family grows and progresses and the impact from being cut off from the world and what happens when you are finally linked to the world. I read this for for Bible as modern literature, and I ended up writing a paper on it comparing 100 Years of Solitude with Genesis, and it was a phenomenal experience. I'm not really into magical realism, but I was totally digging this book. It's a bit nonsensical and a little hard to follow, but I would absolutely recommend reading 100 Years of Solitude and maybe the book of Genesis as well. The parallels are very interesting. One of my most memorable classes was my seminar in world literature, and even though it was world literature, my teacher was a Russian Eastern European Studies major, and she focused the classes on Russian and like Czechoslovakian literature, and I loved pretty much every book I read in that class. Probably the 2 books with the biggest impact were Milan Kundera's The Unbearable Lightness of Being and Jacob or Josef, sorry, Svorecky's The Engineer of Human Souls. They are both Czech Republican writers, and they were both writing about, exile. That was the topic of our seminar, was exile, and both books were inspired by the arrangement of music. One was jazz, especially The Engineer of Human Souls, and I forget The Unbearable Lightness of Being, but anyways, they were both inspired by music. And The Engineer of Human Souls is really long and kind of difficult to get through. It addresses the same main character, Daniel, and I believe they're about 20 years apart, and it's telling the story of his growing up and, everything that shaped him as an adult and how he turned out as an adult and how the exile experience sort of affected him, and, the war and all of that stuff. And that's pretty much also what you see in The Unbearable Lightness of Being, is the war and exile's effect on these people. So I'm not describing these very well, but they're really fantastic books, and I definitely recommend both of them. Like I said, The Engineer of Human Souls is very long and kind of difficult to get through, but I feel like it's a rewarding read, and The Unbearable Lightness of Being is not nearly as long. It's a thinker though, so be prepared for that. Finally, the book that changed my focus. It helped me to decide what I wanted to study for my graduate work, and that is Kurt Vonnegut's Slaughterhouse-Five. When I was younger, I read some science fiction, but mostly fantasy, and I really wasn't a fan of science fiction. At the time, I thought science fiction was hard science fiction. That is, science fiction that's based around the hard sciences like physics and things like that, and basically, how science works and stuff like that. But Slaughterhouse-Five introduced me to a different type of science fiction, a softer science fiction, and it also focuses, like the last two, on war and its effect on people in the main character, Billy Pilgrim. And it's kind of a mind trip, the book. It goes back and forth in time and space, and there's a lot going on in the book, but I don't know, there was just so much to get out of it. And I read an article on, if I can find it, I will put a thing down there, but relating to mythology and science fiction, and specifically mythology in Slaughterhouse-Five, and it completely rearranged my mind and made me look at science fiction as a sort of a way to make mythology for the future. I won't get into it because I have a lot to say about it maybe some other time, but yeah, Slaughterhouse-Five is a fantastic, trippy book, and if you've never read any Kurt Vonnegut, you should give it a try. It's difficult but great, and I recommend it. So, that was my required 101 book tag. If you want to, you should do it. I'm not going to tag anybody specific because I don't have anybody to tag, but it's a great tag. I had a lot of fun going through all of my old like papers that I'd written and you know, syllabi to see what I had been required to read, although most of these jumped to my mind without having to think about them, which is why I chose them. But yeah, so thanks steakuccino for an awesome tag. Please do this if you get a chance.